Hello, Laurel Snyder, and welcome, and thank you so much for being here with us and for accepting this dialogue.
Oh, thank you so much. It's wonderful to meet you. I'm excited to be here.
Well, I've heard you saying that you think of yourself first as a poet.
That's true. And you too, yeah?
Yes. We're matching on this. And I was wondering, what was the moment when the poet decided or felt like writing literature for younger audience?
So there's sort of multiple answers to the question. And the first is that when I was 8 years old, I wanted to write for children. Like that was because I was a child myself. That was what I saw myself doing, is making the books that I loved when I was a kid. And then as you do, I got older. And when I was 16 and I was reading Sylvia Plath poetry and decided I didn't want to be a children's author anymore. I wanted to write serious adult poems. And that was sort of then the plan when I was a teenager and into college. But looking back at it, when I went to college, I was always somebody who read both. So even when I was reading Sylvia Plath, I was still going back and reading, the Chronicles of Narnia or whatever. That sort of, I never really let go of the children's books. And when I think about it, when I think back to college, I went off to college with a stack of books, and some of them were poetry for adults and some of them were children's books. And I don't know how many people left for college and took picture books with them. So it was always in my head. And then I went to graduate school for poetry, where I sort of was very serious and took myself very seriously and the work very seriously. And somewhere in there, I started sort of like the poems started to change. And if I look back at my master's thesis and the work that I was making then, I have this book that no one has read called The Myth of the Simple Machines. That's a collection of poetry for adults. And if you go back and look at that, it looks like I was already headed toward writing for children. The characters in it feel very sort of, there's like a mythic quality to it and a sort of parable quality to it. But then as I finished graduate school, there was this day that I was working on this series of poems called The 5 Most Beautiful Dreams.
What a lovely title.
Thank you. It's the last 5 poems in this book, The Myth of the Simple Machines. So I had these 5 poems that were these huge blocks of prose, these big prose poems that were sort of little fables. And I had said to a friend, what I'd really like to do with this book is break these prose poems up and spread them across pages and do some work with it, like an illustrator or I think I imagined it as like a printmaker or something, then do like a book arts project. And I said, I'd love to spread these poems across pages and then like integrate them with visual art and make like a hybrid project, a hybrid poetry project. And she looked at me and said, I think that's called a picture book. And I realized that my like academic brain, my poet brain wasn't letting me see what I was really doing, which was just trying to find a way to use words and pictures together. So that's sort of where that began. And eventually I started working on middle grade because that was the literature that really most imprinted on me as a kid. Those are the books that are really kind of in my heart the most. But I'm not naturally a long fiction writer, and it's very hard. It's much easier for me to work on a picture book than it is for me to work on a novel.
But this particular novel is absolutely amazing.
Thank you.
It brought me so much joy to read it, and I'm sure I'm not the only one saying that.
Thank you.
And I suggest we talk a little bit about this novel, since it was translated into Romanian, and maybe tell us a few things about the way you came up with the story, the specificities of the setting. There's this island, 9 children living on this island in the sort of an utopian small society, and they're all orphans, and lots of things happen there as they move from childhood into adolescence. And it's very interesting to know, how did you come up with this whole setting?
So a couple of things happened. The first thing was that I had written, I can't keep track, but I had written a bunch of novels before this that had sort of become my job. I had children, I left my day job, and I started working on these books. And basically I was able to stay home as long as I could. Some of this was just financial, like I could keep making a living this way. So I had been trying to sort of make books as for money in a way that is not natural to me and didn't feel comfortable. It's not the most beautiful way to make a book, right? It's with a deadline and a paycheck. And so I'd gotten to a place where the book that I had made before this one is called 7 Stories Up. And it had been a really difficult editorial process, and nobody else's fault, just I had really gotten stuck. And it had been very frustrating, and I found myself feeling like, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm just going to go get a job. I can't make money out of art. Like it's ruining the art to make the money, you know? And so I told my literary agent that I was done and I wasn't going to do this anymore. And that if I ever wrote another novel, it would just be for me. And that I couldn't, it was like ruining the thing that I loved most. And this is just a thing, right? You probably have some sense of that where like commerce meets art is just a very difficult place sometimes. And so she said, okay, take your time. And I decided that what I was going to do was going to go back to all of the tools that I had as a little girl, that I didn't want to type it anymore. I didn't want to be online anymore. Like I wanted to get away from all the things that felt professional and back to the things that felt like the person I was as a writer when I fell in love with writing when I was a little girl. And so I got a notebook and a pencil and a bunch of art supplies, and I sort of sat down thinking like, this is going to be my mode. And if I ever write another book, it's going to be this way. And about the same time, I had been reading with my children at bedtime, and we had just finished reading The Little Prince, and which there is no other book like Le Petit Prince. So we'd finished reading the book, and my kids were baffled by it. They didn't understand it. They didn't understand the snake. They didn't understand the ending. They couldn't figure out. They didn't get it, and they were fascinated. And they kept talking about it and asking questions. And I thought, I want to write a book that makes kids ask questions, that makes kids continue talking about it when the book is done. So that was number one. And then immediately following that, we read a book that I don't know if you read here. It's not well read anymore in the United States either, called My Side of the Mountain, which is about a boy who goes out into the woods and kind of lives in nature and is totally by himself, kind of, you know, he has a pet falcon and he lives in a tree and he like eats berries and, you know, he's like foraging. And my kids were, again, fascinated by the idea that there were no grown-ups. That the world was without grown-ups. And I thought, okay, I want to write a book that asks lots of questions and leaves kids asking questions. And I want to write a book with no grown-ups. Oh. And I want to do this with a pencil and a pad. And this obviously is a very prolonged period of time. And then I just spent a lot of time thinking. And I decided I'm not going to think about this as a word count or a deadline or a product. I don't even know what it's going to become. I just want to see what I can make. And so those are the questions, is how do I leave kids asking questions, and how do I eliminate all the adults from the world? And so at some point it popped into my head that if I made an island, then I could keep the adults out. That like, so then I had an island, and then then it started to populate. And I took all my art supplies, and I think there are some blog posts online about this that I still have out there and floating around in the world. And I started drawing, like, what would be on an island? What would they eat? I mean, it really was just a question of what do I need on this island to support children with no grown-ups? They need clothes, they need shelter, they need food, they need clean water, they need entertainment, they need like sort of, and that was really the question. I didn't know, to begin with, I didn't know why the island was there. Initially there were 10 kids, and I realized that there needed to be an odd number if I was going to go boy, girl. So like I had to reduce the number of kids. Like, so the sort of the project kind of kept winnowing down until I found myself with 9 kids on an island. And the green boat came from, there's a scene at the end of, I think it's Voyage of the Dawn Treader, the C.S. Lewis Chronicles of Narnia, where Reepicheep, who's a mouse, the ship has hit the shallow water. This is about a bunch of people on a ship sailing out to find the edge of the world, and they get to the shallow water where the boat can no longer go, and they have this little green coracle, and Reepicheep the mouse gets in the coracle, keeps going by himself. And so I stole the green boat from C.S. Lewis. But really, that's the process. Like, it was this collage process, and it's the kind of writing, I'm trying to do this again now for the first time since. So it's been 10 years. It's the kind of writing that you can only do if you give yourself unlimited time. Mm-hmm. That you can't make it happen. You sort of have to wait for the details to arrive, like collecting driftwood or something, you know. And that's how it happened. And so every detail in it just sort of arrived. It was like, well, now what will they do tomorrow? And what are they going to have for dinner tonight? And then once I kind of had the stuff of the world, I was able to put the story in place.
That's such an amazing process of writing, like it should be, with this little part of daydreaming and not knowing and keep searching. So you've been talking about this process, you've been giving us so many writing tips.
Oh, yeah.
If anybody out there is asking how to start writing a novel, they should...
I increasingly think that the most important piece for me, and I can never speak to anybody else's experience, but the most important piece for me is slowness, is that the world moves so fast now.
Say again.
The world moves so fast, and we sort of wake up activated every morning. And if it really takes effort now to disconnect and give yourself what I think of as a bubble brain, to get yourself into the cloudy head that sort of is the best place to make art from for me. And I have now I have all these practices that, like, I started reading The Artist's Way. Do you know The Artist's Way?
Yes.
So I started doing The Artist's Way, and I have like all these things that I've built into my day where I spend 10 minutes every morning laying on the floor staring at the ceiling before I sort of do other things.
That's such a good thing.
Because or taking walks, or, like turning my phone off for a day, like just all of these things that you have to do to kind of get yourself back into your own brain.
And to access creativity that doesn't work by the clock.
Yes. And to filter out all the noise, right? It used to be, I tell kids all the time when I visit schools, the hardest part of writing now is finding quiet. That like we just live in a world where there's just somebody is always talking to you. There's always music. There's always a television show on. You want to watch. There's just too much distraction. And so the number one job is just to filter out the distraction. It's like 80% of writing now is just turning things off.
Well, your book packs so much knowledge and wisdom, and it's about so many things. And one of these details that impressed me much is that it's about faith and belief in a non-religious way. Because at the end, I mean, I'm not going to give any spoilers, but just a little bit. At the end of her journey, your protagonist, Jeannie, learns to have faith that the unknown holds something luminous or beneficial or good for us.
Yes.
And
right, faith is a practice. Like you have to work at it sometimes. You have to convince yourself when things seem dark or lost that because good things have happened before, they will happen again. Because something is guiding you before, it will guide you again. And I don't think that has to be inherently. I mean, it is a religious instinct, but for people who don't believe in that sort of way, I don't think that limits your belief in goodness or. I don't know, like the path ahead of you, right? It doesn't have to be fate or destiny, but like that there is a path ahead of you that you can't see yet. And that is something I'm now working on a sequel to this book, and that in some ways is the through line. The second book will be very different, but in some ways that's the through line that I really want to be following. Is that the sort of the things we want at different chapters of our life change, and the lessons we need to learn change. What is the true lesson for you at one age is not necessarily the true lesson for you at the next age, but that sort of the bright line of believing in something, just sort of having faith that there's something ahead, and that you can trust it, and that you can trust yourself to follow it. That feels like the through line to the two books.
I'm so happy that you shared with us this news, this piece of news.
It's brand new news.
It's brand new news, because many people were probably left with so many questions about the specificities of this world, how it works, where are all these children going, where are they coming from, and so on. Even though at a certain point the focus shifts from the outside world to the inner world of the main character as she grows up and as she steps into adolescence. And I was so curious, how did you find the right angle, the right perspective to write about all these things that these children learn on the island, about life and death, about what's right and what's wrong, because they learn all these things by themselves.
Yeah.
How do you explain violence? How do you explain abandonment?
It's funny. I don't think anybody's ever asked me a question quite like that, and it's a new way for me to think about it. But I do believe that the external world changes. Like historically, right? Go back thousands of years. The external world changes. But I don't think that the basic lessons that a kid learns today are probably that different than the basic lessons a kid learned 1,000 years ago, right? Mm-hmm. That like the basic building blocks of life, family, love, security, learning to deal with our own worst instincts, learning to seek out our own best instincts, learning to care for others, learning to be cared for, learning to care for ourselves, learning when and this is a big one, I think, for both books, is when the individual self, our needs, come into conflict with the group or the social contract or like the world beyond us. Like I once had a kid ask me in a school visit that when I'm writing a book, he said, it was like in a room full of like 600 kids or something. And he stood up in an auditorium and said, how do you know when to listen to other people and when to listen to yourself? Oh. As like an editorial decision. Mm. And I just stood there at the front of this room and was like, I don't have an answer. Like, that's a really good question. I don't have an answer for yet. But like those kinds of questions, it doesn't matter what moment in history you're living in, right? We all have to figure those things out. And so... And so on some level, I feel like it those things well up from within a story. Like for me, when I make a story, essentially what I need is a character and a question. And once I know, like, I mean, obviously I need a world, like some sort of setting, but really mostly there's a character and a question. And if you really know the character and you ask it a question, it will do something in response to that question. Or you give it an inciting event and it will respond to that inciting event. And then the story gives you the answer, right? Like, what do they do next? And so then you give them another question or another catalyst, and you see what they do next. So really all you're ever doing is turning to the inside of your character to ask the question. Did I answer your question?
Yes, please go on. I have some more.
Yeah.
But since we're at this point where we're talking about finding the answers within yourself, and since your book is about stepping into adolescence, I'm curious to know, what do you think that what kind of stories do you think teenagers need to learn, to listen to today, so that they find this strength in themselves to be able to navigate this very complicated period?
Yeah. It's a really big question. I think that there are a few things that I see in kids. So my children are now 19 and 20, and they were, children when I wrote this book. I definitely feel like when I think about teenagers today, there's like kids and teenagers, but when I look at teenagers today, I feel nervous that because the world is so complex right now, and because the world is so difficult right now, I worry about two things. One, that we are sending them messages that, I'm not somebody who wants to sugarcoat things, and I'm not somebody who wants to like protect kids from knowing the truth. Yeah. But I also feel like sometimes because we are all getting so much constant messaging, so much information constantly downloading in our world, that the kids are just getting pounded with negativity. That like it is climate change and it is war and it is, like global like insecurity, and it's just everything feels so heavy. So it's funny, I hear a lot of booksellers and librarians saying what we really need is happy stories right now. That what kids really need is just sort of to be given stories that are not about messages and danger and risk and all of this. I don't know if that's, we all need everything always, but there is some part of me that even though I like to write books that are complicated and sort of tricky, that there is some part of me that feels like what kids some of what kids need right now is reassurance that, like, despite everything, the basic tools and building blocks are still there for them, and that things will be okay. Like, it is the faith thing of, like, just follow the bright line. It will be okay. That feels important. And the other thing, and this is something that I am thinking about as I write the second book, I feel like we're putting a lot of pressure on kids to fix the world. That there's, you look at, like, Greta Thunberg, we have these models, or Malala, like, we have these models of, like, kids can save the world, and that's true. Like, they're going to have to, because they're going to live in it when we're gone. And also, because it will become their world. Yeah. And also, the idea that kids should save the world feels dangerous to me. I feel like that's just a lot of pressure.
And a little bit selfish.
Totally.
From
we
the
ruined it.
grown-ups.
You take it. Right. This doesn't seem fair.
And it's not their fault.
No. And right. And so in creating an island of children who are totally self-sufficient, I certainly don't mean to say that sort of they should run everything, because there's a reason they're there. Somebody did something, right? Exactly. Like, there's the world has been created as it was, and they have arrived in it. So I don't know. I think but that is my instinct, is that as we are honest with them, as we are telling them the truth about the difficulties of the world, to give them faith and reassurance at the same time, and not to put too much pressure on them that this is their job. Like, we're still here helping out, right? They don't have to be superheroes,
And what do you need as a writer to move confidently in this world and to find enthusiasm for writing new stories and to give hope, because you give so much hope through your writing? Yeah.
I mean, I think we were talking before we began about the things you can solve and the things you can't solve, and sort of the big world and then the small worlds we live in. I think community is really important, like just restorative, supportive community. That the community of children's book, that I'm here today, that I was coming to Romania and I got to come and sit down with you and have this wonderful conversation, to me is really affirming. That, like, I despite everything, can go out into the world and meet new people who care about the things I care about, and we connect, and who knows, we'll be chatting a year from now. That sort of there's that piece. I need community, and I need, like, calm. I need sleep. And so figuring out how to balance, just like with kids, like how to balance seeing the world clearly, living in the real world, doing what I can to help, and giving myself space to rest and regroup. And I've been offline I was saying earlier, I've been offline for the last 2 months. And the degree to which I'm sleeping better when I'm not on social media and taking in constant news is remarkably, it's been a really interesting, it's the first time I've done it, and I started blogging in 1998. So I feel like I've been, like, actively involved in the online community for decades. And just sort of waking up in the morning and having your coffee and going out to the garden and sitting down to read a book without all of that other information coming in has been really good for my writing process. And I didn't realize how much I needed to do that. So I recommend that to anybody who's feeling frazzled and like they maybe need a little calm space from which to make art or whatever other work in the world. I highly recommend taking a social media break.
And just because you mentioned the book, as a tool for restoring your energy and your peace of mind so as to be able to create more. I'm curious to know what kind of literature feeds you. So what kind of books are you searching for?
I have a tricky thing that I don't know if other people feel, which is that I can't read something within the form that I'm writing. I cannot read while I'm drafting. I can do it when I'm revising later. Yeah. But right now I'm in the process of drafting a new novel, and so I can't read middle grade fiction. I can read anything but middle grade fiction because I'm afraid I'll steal voice. Like, I'm afraid I'll steal accidentally, sort of absorb from the things that I'm reading. So for the most part, I'm not reading middle grade fiction right now. I just finished reading, when I was beginning this book, I just finished reading a really wonderful biography of Gertrude Stein. That it's half a biography of Gertrude Stein and half a biography of her estate. So sort of what happened to her work after she was gone. And there's something about, I love reading books. I also just finished reading a couple of other literary biographies. I love, again, it's community. It's like feeling like I'm in the company of other writers. So I just finished a biography of Dennis Johnson, who's a poet and fiction writer. Things like that. I'm trying to think, what else have we been doing? I usually have like a novel. So like right now I'm reading Land, which is the new Maggie.
Yeah, Maggie Farrell.
Yeah. So I'm reading that as my like paper book. And then I will also have a Libby. Libby is our library app in the United States, one of our library apps. So I can do audiobooks through the library on my headset. So I usually have a book that I'm sort of like falling asleep to at night. And then a book that I'm like reading during the day. So, yeah.
So many wonderful books.
Yeah.
And since we're in this lovely corner surrounded by books, children's books, basically, I was wondering if you have an optimistic message for parents or caretakers who are worried by the fact that children maybe read less nowadays, or for the moments where they simply struggle to make children come close to a book rather than to a phone or a screen.
Yeah, I mean, I hate to say it, but I feel like, so my kids are big readers. I feel very, very fortunate in that way. I do think it ultimately comes down to, like, once you've given them the phone, it is very hard to pull that back. And for us, my kids really held off on the digital stuff until COVID. And then when they were going to school 8 hours a day online, it was very hard to figure out how to, like, if they're online all day anyway, how do you not let them then use the computer to play games or, talk to their friends? So my kids were in seventh, they were 12 and 13 at that time. So we sort of lost control there. But we got to that place where, there was we always had a big laundry basket full of picture books and graphic novels in the back seat of the car. So that sort of that was, it's like, if you're bored, this is where you go. You go to the books, I do think that, I think that the most important thing is probably disconnection as much as what you can, because all of us, me too, right? Like, it's too easy to go to the phone. It's too easy. There's always a good television show you want to binge watch. Like, it never goes away. And you have, even if you're somebody who loves reading and knows it will be better for you and that you'll enjoy it more in the long run to read, you still have to force yourself to do it because these things have been designed to be addictive, right? But the other thing is, I think reading choice is just so important, that whatever book a kid wants to read is the best book for them at that moment in time. And that the idea that some literature matters and some doesn't, or that there's good books and bad books. Of course, there are books that I think are good and books that I think are less good. But that doesn't mean that that the good book is better for my kid in a moment where what he wants to do is pick up a comic book. So that feels really important to me. And I do feel like we've gotten very messagey with our books. I don't know if this is true here. I don't know how the literature varies, but I feel like, and that's not to say that we don't want messages in our books. All books have messages in them, but that the idea of like selecting books for your kids because there are certain messages you want them to take away from the books, it just feels like a flawed thing to me, that no two people get the same exact message from a book or have the same exact experience of a book. And so sort of trying to control what they read based on our adult preferences feels like a real mistake.
And kind of one-sided.
Yeah. Who gets, right. That's just a control. Again, lack of faith, right? If you give a kid a library card and they have the ability to, and that's what they get to control in their life, and letting them just kind of go loose in the library and figure out who they are and what they want out of a book. I don't know. I also think as much as I love middle grade fiction, I really believe that most of us, at least where I live, most of us consume most of our poetry and art in our lifetime before we turn like 10 years old, right? That like most of the art and poetry you get in your life, just, in like metric tons or whatever, becomes it through picture books. And so sort of kids who have real access to really gorgeous, really powerful picture books of all kinds seem to me to be kids who are more likely to read widely and broadly when they're older, because they know what a book can do. They know all the things a book can do. And the picture books are just so impactful. Whenever I go into a middle school or high school, which doesn't happen that often, but every now and then I get to go work with older kids. And I always offer them the opportunity to hear a picture book. And it's just amazing how much older kids also want to hear everybody wants to hear a picture book, you know? So
they're so tempting for us
yeah.
grown-ups as well.
Yeah, no.
They're so beautiful.
They're beautiful and they're brief, and you can go slowly with them and then sort of close your eyes and sit with them after they're done in a way that just feels different. So I feel like leaning into picture books is part of how we get kids to love other kinds of books too.
And I have just one more question before we finish our lovely conversation. I think in every small, beautiful corner with books, there's a big elephant nowadays called AI.
Yeah.
It's hard not to talk about this elephant in the room. And I'm curious about your take on this reality, and how do you see future with the big elephant in it?
I mean, to go back to what we were saying, so it's all the things, right? On the one hand, let's have faith.
Yes.
Let's believe that at the end of the day, people will read the books that matter, and the books that floor them and surprise them and shock them and soothe them in all these different ways. And let's have faith that at the end of the day, human artists are the best at being human and connecting to other humans, right? So that's one thing, is like, let's have faith. I do think, at least at this moment in time, AI is very good at sort of compiling and digesting and regurgitating what already exists. And it's not good at invention. It's not art. And so it's going to replicate and replace a lot of copy, but I don't think it's going to replace the little prince, right? And it's not going to invent the next thing that shocks and delights and soothes us. So that's one thing that gives me some peace, is like, it pushes me to be a better artist, right? The better I am at my job, the less I can be replaced by AI. And there are some things it is going to do, and we're going to benefit from that in some ways, right? When I'm at the grocery store trying to figure out what to make for dinner, AI might be able to help me figure out like what to do if they're out of sour cream, or there's a million, or how to find a doctor in a city I've never been to before. Like, the AI will solve problems for people. It is a powerful tool, and I do think that artists will learn to use it, right? That it's great for research and like indexing information that you want to use in your nonfiction book, right? And there will be ways that poets play with it and use it to generate randomized, like I used to have this dream for a project that I never made. I haven't done this, but I had this dream for a project because I mentioned Plath earlier. So I used to have this dream for a young adult novel that I will probably still never write. But the idea was to take all of Plath's poetry and all of Sexton's poetry and basically come up with a vocabulary of all the words used in each woman's work, right? And then to take those vocabularies and write two sort of interweaving verse novels that end with the suicides, but that only use the vocabulary that they themselves used. So that I'm using only Sylvia's language to write a Sylvia story, and I'm using only Anne's language to write an Anne story, right? And to make this interweaving. I mean, now, this would have been a massive bear of a project. I started trying to compile the vocabulary. I gave up on the whole project. Like, I would need an alphabetized dictionary of words they used, right? You know who could do that for me?
Well,
AI, right? So if I really wanted to make this weird, innovative, hybrid verse project that I wanted to make, I would never have been able to pull it off. I could now, if I wanted to, ask AI to do that for me. And it would do a fairly reliable job. Probably not perfect, but a fairly reliable job of that. So I think there are ways that artists are going to find to use AI and incorporate AI into their work. I'm not there, and I'm not actually a very high-tech person, and I find it intimidating. And I also, this actually goes back to to tie everything back to Orphan Island. Like, the backstory of why the island exists is not unrelated to the fact that we are living in a world of AI today. And I don't want to get into the details of it because I haven't started writing the book yet, but there's a reason why you create an island for a bunch of children to live in a really basic, gritty, hands-on, make and do sort of way, if the world outside has become not that. And so I think that the reason I fear AI is more that I don't trust myself to keep doing the things that make my life meaningful if I have a machine that can do those things more easily and more quickly for me. And so for me, there's a sense of, I resist AI because it's not good for me, not because it's going to destroy the world. So.
Thank you so much for everything you shared and for the new details about the sequel to this wonderful novel.
Thank you so much for having me. I really, really appreciate it. This has been a wonderful conversation.
It has been, hasn't it?
Yeah,
and so full of hope.
Yeah.
Which is not the norm.
Well, let's just keep looking for that.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.